Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 3 of Dracula, which is a tie-in to the Blood Hunt event, written by Danny Lore. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. This issue opens with Brielle lying on the ground, seemingly defeated, as Varney's threatening figure stood over her. Now Varney observed her with a mix of curiosity and contempt. So, this is the child the mortals rest their hopes upon, mused Varney aloud. But that was interrupted when Dracula's voice cut in sharply and called his name, Varney. Now despite Brielle's difficult position, Dracula dismissed Varney's attempt to harm her and said, "You may have entranced the girl, but your incorporeal form can do little to harm her." To which Varney retorted by accusing Dracula of misunderstanding his motives. He claimed he sought to show Brielle the folly of Dracula's schemes so they could rule the eternal night together, as befits a father and his daughter. Now Dracula, undeterred, declared it is not her fate to act as your herald. So as the two powerhouses prepared for battle, we jumped over to Varney's entrapment of Brielle's mind. And when we get there, she seemingly regains her consciousness, finding herself in a surreal and shifting reality. Whatever this is, it's the opposite of waking up, she thought, as the world warped around her. She felt disoriented, like reality was a rippling pool with her limbs as the only steady point. The familiar smell of Atlanta's air filled her senses, grounding her slightly. So as the rippling spread, she recognized her school. The towers and battlements of the school spoke to her, telling her, "This is mine." Confusion mixed with recognition as Brielle navigated this dreamlike state. She didn't walk toward the school. Instead, she envisioned herself inside, and reality obliged. Her surroundings felt like an extension of her own mind, echoing the sentiment, mine. Mine, that everything belonged to her. Entering the school, Brielle felt a sense of ownership but also a strange smallness. If this place is mine, why am I so small here? She wondered. Now the whispers around her grew louder, gaining a baseline that felt more like a gong or a school bell. So as she traveled down the corridor, Brielle whispered that the echoes were hers. Now despite the surreal atmosphere, Brielle knew exactly which classroom to go to. Nothing should make sense here, and nothing does, but regardless she still knew what classroom to go to, she thought, as the school seemed to guide her. The whispers reassured her, saying it was because the place was hers. And when she entered the room, at that moment was when she believed it. Now a wave of relief washed over Brielle as she entered a cathedral-like room in the school. Her father, Blade, stood there like a ray of hope. "My dad is here," stated Brielle. "And he'd make this all right, and we'd fix it together," she thought as a sense of security overcame her. Or at least that is what happens when your father is Blade the Daywalker. Now Blade stood stern and focused as he beckoned his daughter to stand by his side. Despite his demeanor, Brielle sensed something was off and reached for her sword, ready to defend herself if need be. "My sword," she shouted. In response, Blade stated, "In our castle, you do not need a blade. You need only the violence that I have passed on to you." As she grappled with her father's threatening presence and the surreal reality of their situation, Brielle realized the unsettling nature of the encounter. So with that going down, Brielle's mind began to spiral as her bloodlust took over and everything started to turn red in her world. Now accompanied by this bloodlust was a feeling of an overwhelming hunger that arose from her chest to her eyes. "There's nothing left but my thirst," she realized as the bloodlust consumed her. Now a strange sense cut through the hunger, which brought her strength and a chilling approval for what her mind was telling her to do. "This is your inheritance, girl," echoed Blade's voice in her mind. "You are meant to be a predator." Now following those words, shadows took familiar forms and changed into something wearing the faces of her friends, Rebecca and Jaden, but unfortunately, her hunger did not recognize them. Because ultimately the bloodlust overpowered her ability to see her friends as anything other than prey. So with that said, we transition back to the living world where we see Dracula putting in work. For amidst the chaos, Dracula found himself battling minions that would have been child's play for even his generals. Now despite the odds staked against him, Dracula was determined to play his part in the impending events and drove himself forward. So as he hacks and slashes his way through the vampires that stand in his way, he reminds himself that the girl still has her part to play in what's to come, so because of that, he refused to be halted by the cannon fodder before him. Now with his patience running thin, Dracula asks if this is all Varney had for him. Because for the Avengers, Varney flings their friends' future corpses at them as a pathetic but obvious attack. So if Varney's goal was to insult the Lord of Vampires by having him face underlings, then he has achieved it, sneered Dracula. So with that insult delivered, Varney summoned a monstrous creature that caught Dracula's interest. What's this now? Oh, I see, thought Dracula, as an abomination born from blood magic rose before him, ready for battle. Now at that moment, Dracula realized that the lackeys he cut down were not fodder, but instead resources. Now with things heating up, Dracula acknowledged and recognized the creature as a potential adversary. Now the monstrous grotesque creation roared before Dracula. So with the next wave of the battle about to kick off, Dracula taunted Varney and said, "Perhaps the results of your blood magic will be a more worthy adversary," and held his sword at the ready as he prepared for battle. So with that going down, we jump back to Brielle, and when we get there, Brielle's rage and bloodlust fueled her actions as she attacked her friends, Rebecca and Jaden, for she was now transformed into a monstrous form by Varney's influence. Have you ever been so angry, so ravenous that you feel your body and mouth reacting before your brain pumps the brakes, thought Brielle, as she struggled to control her instincts. Blade's voice echoed in her mind and said he heard her tell her mother that she is no hero. That much is true, for there are no heroics in your bloodline. Because according to who Brielle believes to be Blade, they were rulers of the night and meant to hunt and dominate. And like all of those under his sway, she is drawn to blood, better yet, controlled by it, so why even resist? So her attempts to deny where her true powers resided will continue to fail. So as Brielle grappled with this internal conflict, torn between her inherited nature and her desire to protect her friends. So with that going down, Varney decided to press her weakness and stated their kind will always win, for they will outlast and outhunt them. And with those words, he turned her friends into vampires as well. Now with everything falling down around her, Blade decided to extend an offer to ensure that everyone she cared about survived the war, but in vampire form. And he would only do it if she agreed to join his side. So as Brielle sat disoriented, the warping reality pushed her closer and closer towards Varney, but the sound of it, however, reeked of blood. Now speaking of something reeking of blood, Dracula, back in the waking world, states that the air around them reeks of rancid clotting blood. So as the creature rushed towards Dracula, Dracula couldn't help but to notice that Varney's creature moved with an arcane single-mindedness. So as the battle continued, Dracula thought to himself how the magic that holds it together makes fighting it like slicing through a river of blood. A coursing flow that pushes him back as efficiently as it blocks his progress. And like the creatures before him, Dracula's anger has transmuted. So because of that, Dracula was no longer insulted by the lack of adversaries, but engulfed with rage at the continued assault on Dracula's domain. So as things started to intensify, Dracula started to notice how Varney's power began to wax, but that does not mean that his own started to wane. Because Dracula has maintained his title against hordes of challengers, against those who sought it for themselves, and those who sought to end it. So if Varney's blood beasts move like rushing water, then he shall be the mountain they can do nothing about but crash against. So with a slice of his blade, Dracula called Varney a fool to think that he shall be bested by spoiled sustenance. So with the main creature gone, Dracula turned to face the remainder and thought to himself how his sword sliced through magic as it would any flesh. So with that going down, Dracula knew that the fool pretender to his throne was watching, and his attentions were stretched and split across the city. But lucky for Dracula, he does not have such a divide, because his main goal is to protect the girl, and he will have what he wants. And the only real true hurdle to his will being done is whether or not the girl truly is as stubborn as her father. So with his enemy defeated, he turned to face Brielle on the ground. Now speaking of Brielle, we skip back over to her as Blade's presence is imposing as he tries to convince Brielle to embrace her true power. You know how this ends. Brielle, side with Dracula and our enemy, and all you know and love dies. Or stop playing hero and save your friends by accepting your part in our kingdom. Brielle, defiant, replied by saying, "You're right, I'm not a hero, I'm not Daredevil. But if I was, I'd have stopped you already, just because it's the right thing to do." So as she glanced at her friends, Rebecca and Jaden, as Blade's words echoed in her mind. But I'm thinking, maybe Daredevil was right. If Rebecca and Jaden became this, then they'd hate it too much for me to let it happen. So with determination, she declared that she can't stand by and watch her family and friends become evil, just because she is too scared to fight. So because of that, she loves her dad too much to stand beside him in that form. So with that said, Blade's anger erupted as he responded by saying, does she think her bold, caring speeches mean anything to him? Because from where he is standing, she is just a stupid mortal child. Because according to Varney, his power was the power of the eternal. So as Varney started to transform, Brielle found herself overwhelmed because for a moment, she thought she could be over her head and almost fell for his trick. But then, amidst the chaos, she heard a familiar sound that brought her back to reality. For the buzzing sound of the school bell rang out, and Brielle realized that school was most definitely over. So on the next page, the world around Brielle started to collapse as she ran towards the buzzing bell, and with each step she took, the bell just continued to grow louder. Now see, she wasn't running away, but instead, she was running towards something. For her mother's voice echoed in her mind, encouraging her to wake up by saying, "Brielle? It's Mom. I don't know if you can hear me, but please don't leave me like this, honey. I don't need you to be an avenger or your father. I need you to wake up." Brielle felt a surge of determination as her mother continued, "If you need to stay in New York and fight or you want to run all the way back home to me, I don't care. I just need you to wake up and choose. I trust whatever decision you make." And above all, she loves her and is proud of her, and all she wants to hear is her voice. Now Brielle's refusal to join Varney shattered the world he built, but it was her mother's voice that showed her the path out. Now it cut through Dracula's demands and the lies Varney told through her father's mouth. Brielle realized she had spent so much time talking about what she couldn't do that she forgot what she could actually accomplish. But in her mother's voice, Brielle heard someone who knew her and trusted her to find the way. And with that push, she wanted to fight to hear that belief in her again. Now once she woke up, Brielle, now grounded and focused, immediately tried to connect with her mother. And said, "Mom, it's me, I'm here, please don't hang up." Her mother's voice, full of relief and love, responded and said, "Baby girl, there is nothing on this earth that could make me hang up this phone." Now following that statement, Brielle felt a surge of emotions as tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I never should have left without telling you, but everything was going so wrong, and Dad, he's..." Her voice trailed off, the weight of her struggles pressing down on her. "Oh, trust me, when this is over, we'll talk about it. But you wouldn't have been the Brielle I raised had you waited," reassured her mother as she remained understanding and supportive. "I won't say I'm not scared for you, Brielle, but I'm your mother, so I'm always scared for you. Just promise me, whatever decision you make today, you do it because it feels right to you. Do that, and I'll deal with being scared," continued her mother with both concern and unwavering faith. Brielle's resolve hardened as she told her mother that she loved her and was gonna make sure they both lived long enough that she make her sick of hearing it all the time, following that her mother chuckled softly and said, "Making me sick of you is the only thing I know you can't do. I love you." So when everything was set and done, Dracula, having listened to the conversation, interjected and asked if she had made your decision. Now with the phone hung up, Brielle placed it back in her jacket and asked Dracula why he wasn't trying to boss her around. To which Dracula responded by saying, "There is no need." Now with that statement, Brielle informed Dracula that she would have said thank you if she thought he'd care about it. Now this prompted Dracula to say sarcastically that her family isn't known for their manners. So with Brielle's mind made up and Dracula at her side, the two unlikely allies set off to take care of Brielle's responsibility, Brielle's family. So with that said, this issue of Dracula's Blood Hunt tie-in comes to an end. Now with that out there, if you want to stay in the loop about any individual storyline, then how about you hop over to the playlist section down below or in the link cards above to get all caught up on the Blood Hunt event. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.